Okay, so this is still in chapter 5, and this is notes number 18, dividing polynomials. We're going to be dividing several different types. This is a trinomial divided by a monomial. And basically what that means, you're going to do this the same way you were doing it in the previous lesson, but what it means is each one of these terms is being divided by that denominator. So you can separate it like this. Now you won't need to in the end, but just so you understand what I'm doing, I'm going to separate it this first time. After this, you don't have to separate it like this. You can just go ahead and simplify it, because all it is simplifying. So 6 divided by 3 becomes 2. Remember, you actually divide the coefficients. And what you do with the exponents is subtract, so that becomes x to the third, y to the second. This becomes plus 12 divided by 3 is 4. 3 minus 1 becomes 2. 2 minus 1 becomes y to the first. And then this is minus 18 divided by 3 is 6. X squared over x. 2 minus 1 is x to the first, and the y's cancel out. So all it is simplifying, but it's each term. So next time you can just go straight from this to your answer. As long as you understand that each term is being divided by that, you don't have to write this whole step here. But you should be writing it in the notes so you understand what we did to get to this. And now we're going to get into the long division. And long division is very similar to long division of constants, of your regular long division. So I'm going to refresh your memory on that real quick here. When I'm dividing, okay, this large number, 38,000 something, divided by 7, you first look at this first term. 7 doesn't go into 3. 7 goes into 38 5 times. Then remember what you're doing is you're multiplying these two back to get to be 35. And then what you do from there is you subtract it, and that becomes 3. And then you bring down this 2, and you rinse and repeat and keep going. 7 goes into 32, not 5, but now 4. 4 times 7 is 28. I subtract it. This subtraction step is going to be very big when we get to the polynomials. So that becomes 4, bring down the 6, 7 goes into 30 or 46 6 times, that becomes 6 times 7 is 42, subtract 4, and 7 goes into 45 6 times, again that's 42, subtract, and I have a remainder of 3. So there was 2 ways you can write the remainder, so it becomes 5,466 with the remainder of 3, or you can write that as a fraction, 3 over your divisor of 7. Okay, so we're going to be writing it as a fraction. So when I go to do this one, I have this quadratic, x squared plus 3x minus 40, that's being divided by x minus 5. And what you're looking at is this first term, okay, this x. So I'm really doing x squared divided by x. And you can look at it 2 ways. I like to just think of it as x times what will give me x squared. That's the same thing as division. So that's going to be an x. X times x is x squared. Okay, let me move it over some. Because what I need to do now is multiply this x back through, just like we did when I multiplied this 5 with the 7 to get 35. I'm doing x times x minus 5, and that's going to become x squared minus 5x. Make sure you're lining them up with their like terms so that they can combine. Okay, because now from there I'm going to subtract, just like I subtracted this 35. But when I subtract, I'm going to basically distribute that negative all the way through this line. So that becomes negative. This I'm subtracting as well, which will become positive. And now I can combine my like term. So this first term should always cancel out. 3x plus 5x becomes 8x. And now I bring down the minus 40 and rinse and repeat. Start over. So x times what will give me 8x. Okay? Or again, you can think of it as 8x divided by x becomes what? 8. So now I'm going to multiply that back through. 8 times x is 8x. 8 times negative 5 is negative 40. But I need to distribute that negative. Change all the signs is all you're doing in that case. You're changing all the signs throughout the line. And then at that point, you're just combining. Okay? So these cancel out. These cancel out. My remainder is 0. And I have x plus 8. So for this one, we have this trinomial a squared plus 7a minus 11 being multiplied with 3 minus a raised to the negative first. Well, what that means is that 3 minus a is in the denominator. So it's a division problem. I'm going to rewrite this, negative a plus 3. And so I have the trinomial divided by this binomial. And I'm going to start by what multiplies negative a to get a squared is going to be negative a. So let's multiply that out. I get positive a squared minus 3a. Remember, now I have to subtract, so I'm distributing the negative and changing the signs. These will cancel out. This becomes 10a minus 11. Negative a times negative 10 becomes positive 10a. Distribute back through. So I'm multiplying negative 10 with negative a plus 3. And that's what I'm getting in this line. So that becomes positive 10a, negative 30. I'm going to go through and change my signs. That becomes negative. This becomes positive. And combine my like terms. And I'm left with positive 19. So I have negative a minus 10 with the remainder of 19, and we're going to put it as 19 over negative a plus 3, whatever you're dividing by. So your remainder is added on to the end of the polynomial being divided by the divisor. So this time I have a cubic being divided by a quadratic. And as I'm writing it out, pay attention that this cubic is missing a term. So this x term is missing. Whenever there's a term missing, you got to make sure you use a 0 in that spot. So you have a place for that term. More than likely there is still going to be a term there that you're going to have to have a place for. So what happens here? X squared times what will give me x cubed. So that's going to be x to the first because then I add the exponents and that will become x to the third. When I distribute it back through, I'm not going to write it all out here, but it's x times x squared is x to the third. X times 2x becomes positive 2x squared. X times negative 1 is negative x. And I want to make sure I'm lined up with all my like terms. And then I'm going to change the signs. So this becomes a negative, this becomes a negative, and this becomes a positive. And I combine them. These cancel out. This becomes 5x squared minus 2x squared, which is 3x squared. This becomes positive 1x, and bring down the minus 2. And now continue on. X squared times what will give me 3x squared? Well, that's going to be plus 3. And then I'm going to multiply it back through. 3x squared 3 times 2x becomes 6x. 3 times -1 is -3. I'm going to change all my signs. I'm not going to change my color this time. That becomes a negative. This becomes a negative. A lot of times I'll write it up here, but I'll circle it because that's the sign I want to use. And then this becomes a positive. So then from here, combine my terms. These cancel out. X minus 6x becomes -5x. -2 plus 3 becomes +1. Once this denominator, this exponent is greater than what is down here, you're done. So I have x plus 3 and then plus -5x plus 1 over what I divided by x squared plus 2x minus 1. So I got one more long division one, and this has a coefficient on the x that's in the divisor. I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking at this first term to see what 3x times what will give me 3x to the fourth. Well, 3 times 1 will give me 3, and I need x to the third. So then when I multiply that back out, if you want to write it out, you can. I didn't on the last one. But you're multiplying it through this. That's going to be 3x to the fourth plus 3x cubed. I'm sorry, plus x cubed. And then I'm changing my signs. This becomes a minus. This becomes a negative. So -5x cubed minus x cubed, that's going to become -6x cubed. These x to the fourths canceled out, which they should. That first term should always cancel out. I'm going to bring this x squared down. And then I have 3x times, this is going to be -2 to get to -6. And x times x squared is going to get me to x cubed. Again, if you want to do the division part, you can set it up like this and simplify it. This becomes -2, subtract them, x squared. That's what's going to go up here. Then when I multiply it back through, -2 times positive 3x is -6x cubed. -2x squared times 1 becomes -2x squared. I got to remember to change my signs. That means I already changed them. So now I'm combining like terms. These should cancel out, which they do. This becomes 3x squared. So I bring down the 7x and then I start over. 3x times x will give me 3x squared. And when I multiply it back through, that's going to be 3x squared plus x. Change the signs. Make that a minus. These cancel out. This becomes 6x. And there's nothing else there. So my last one, plus 2. 2 times 3x becomes 6x. 2 times 1 is 2. Distribute the negative, don't forget that part. And when I combine it, this is a 0. Remember I had a 0 here, that was missing. This becomes -2. So that's my remainder. So I have x to the third minus 2x squared plus x plus 2 with the remainder of -2. So I put plus -2 over 3x plus 1. Okay, so here's a you try. Go ahead and try this using long division, and then I'll give you the answer in a second. Pause it! So here's the work. I've put the sign changes in green, and your answer should have been x plus 10 with no remainder.